I am a sort of a mixture or hybrid Anglican, if you like. I have all traditions in me and not really sort of fixed in one particular tradition, if you like. So my name is Tim Wambunya. I am currently a vicar at St. Paul's in Slough and an assistant bishop, honorary assistant bishop in the Diocese of Oxford. I was born in Kenya, in Nairobi, and my parents and grandparents came from Western Kenya. And we were brought up in a strict Christian homestead. My grandfather was one of the first African people to be ordained in the Anglican Church, and my grandmother was also one of the first African ladies to be made a lay reader in that church. And so throughout my sort of teenage life, all the way to when I was about 12, I went to an Anglican church every Sunday in my sort of smart Sunday best. And then when I was about 13 years old, that's when I made a commitment to become a Christian. I left the Anglican church for a while. I went off to Baptist church, and then I went off to Pentecostal church because I thought the Anglican church was a bit boring. So I spent my teenage life in a Pentecostal church or Baptist church. And when I came to the UK, my grandmother said I should look for a proper church. And by that she meant look for Church of England. And she didn't want me going off to a Pentecostal church that had a strange name or something like that. And so I, to be nice to my grandmother, I went to an Anglican church in the morning and a Pentecostal church in the evening. So my journey to ordination, this is how it happens. When I came to the UK, I came when I was about 19 or 20, and I came to work in the Navy. And a bishop of that diocese, Portsmouth Diocese, came to a service that we had in one of our naval chapels. And after the service, he said to me, as we were sort of seeing him off, he said to me, "I will ordain you if you want to be ordained." And I said, "Fine, if you if you'd like to ordain me, then I'd like to be ordained as well." So I then resigned my job in the Navy and began going through the process of ordination. And I'm glad to say that my process was very quick, actually, in terms of the whole selection and selection process, which is where most people find difficulty. I had a very smooth path, really, and it's because I had a bishop who sort of had identified me and was willing to support me all the way. In terms of training, I had difficulty choosing the college that I felt was more suited to my tradition. And so I went off to a college that I felt was more in line with my tradition, more sort of mixture of Pentecostal, charismatic, and all those things that were part of me. I am a sort of a mixture or hybrid Anglican, if you like. I have all traditions in me. Pentecostal, I am Anglican. I don't speak in tongues, but I'm quite happy for people to speak in tongues around me. And so this is something that I can deal with very easily and not really sort of fixed in one particular tradition, if you like. So after I did my curacy here in the UK in Ealing, in West London, I then went off and was an incumbent in North London. And then I was invited by a mission agency to go back to Kenya to head the theological college. And I remember thinking that I really don't want to go back to Kenya at this point. I said to myself that I'll do all my ministry here in the UK, then I'll retire back to Africa when I was old enough. Because every African's nightmare is to end up in an old people's home in Europe or somewhere in the UK. So I was determined I wasn't going to end up in an old people's home. But I wasn't quite ready at that point when I was approached, and I remember saying no 4 times. So I asked them, and they kept asking me, and I kept saying no. And eventually my wife traveled to Kenya, and I said to her that they will ask you to ask me to go back to Kenya. And if they do say I said no, and sure enough, when she went back to Kenya, everybody asked her if I could go back to Kenya. And meanwhile, the mission agency made another approach to me again. And I said yes this time, because I thought I really must go if I'm to do something. So I went back to Kenya, and we had a good time at the theological college, where we led this mixed international theological college in Nairobi. And then eventually I was invited to be an African bishop, and I happily served as a diocesan bishop for 7 years. And then we felt we needed to come back to the UK to support our children And so we came back to the UK, and this is where I am now in St. Paul's, Slough. St. Paul's, Slough is the designated intercultural resourcing hub church, if you like, of the Diocese of Oxford. And what we're being asked to do as a hub is to, first of all, just create a model of intercultural mission. And having done that, then share that model and expertise, if you like, with others within the diocese so that we can better reach out or better serve, minister to people of other ethnicities, because we have people of multiple ethnicities in the diocese, and sometimes people aren't quite sure how to reach them or how to engage them or how to make ministry more accessible to them. And we're hoping that in the next 3 or 4 years that we will have helped at least 12 different churches in the diocese to be involved in intercultural mission. I think Black History Month is an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of Black people and their contributions in the Church of England, for that matter. Sometimes I think that we spend very little time just celebrating what Black people have done in the Church of England, but also there's a lot of ignorance out there on what contribution Black people have made to England, to the Church of England, to the Anglican Church. And I think this is a good time just to highlight all the positive things, the good things, the achievements of Black people in the church as well as in the public sector, if you like. And so I think that, you know, it's good to just spend a month doing this kind of things to encourage other people, to give them confidence, especially those who feel marginalized or feel that they're not recognized as Black people in this country. The terrain has really changed compared to when we were coming forward for ministry. I remember when I was ordained, and the whole of the London diocese that had approximately 600 clergy, there was just about 2 or 3 Black clergy at that point. And it was seen as such a strange thing to have a Black person coming forward for ministry. I remember I was on the front page of the Church Times just because I was Black, not because I'd done something extraordinary. But now things are better. It's more acceptable for Black people to go forward for ministry. And so I say, if you're a Black person, especially a Black man who feels God is calling them, then you need to step forward. You take the initiative and say, here I am, Lord. If you're calling me, I'm prepared to come forward and serve.